Jimmy on the beat, boy. Jimmy on the beat, boy. Jimmy on the beat, boy.
Everybody, welcome to the Gin College Podcast. I'm your host, as always, John to the second here with Cody Almasti. Cody, how are you doing today?
Doing good, brother. Fired up, ready to talk college sports with you, as always. Just, Malik Cunningham liked one of my graphics, so feeling good today.
Yeah, Malik Cunningham of the Louisville Cardinals liked one of our posts today, feeling pretty good about that. And we're just trying to get the news out, trying to get all the words out. A lot of stuff happening in the college football landscape. And we're here to talk to you guys about a lot more regarding the college football landscape here today on the Gin College Podcast. Today is Friday, November 19th, 2021. If you guys haven't already, navigate over to our YouTube channel. I just put a new gin and tonic out regarding the Zach Stacy incident, whatever you want to call it, absolute travesty going on. Ex-NFL player. Cody, I'm sure you heard about that. We were talking about it in our Discord last night. What do you have to say about that?
Yeah, my wife was actually the one to show me that. So you can't imagine how I feel as a newly married man just seeing that kind of domestic violence. Cannot be accepted or tolerated. Last time I checked, he was still at large, and he needs to be brought to justice. That's all I'll say.
Yeah, they need to bring the hammer down on him. It's absolute terrible display, garbage of a human being. You can't have that. Can't have it anywhere. No matter if you are a professional athlete, ex-professional athlete, celebrity, no matter who you are, you can't do it. I thank God that this was on film. I mean, I said it in my gin and tonic. Over 90% of these domestic assault cases are not filmed. So to have physical evidence of something that actually happened, with these home cameras, thank God the ex-girlfriend had those in her house, because that's going to really help her case a lot. So good stuff there. As far as getting him caught with the hard evidence. So let's move right into it. Let's talk about some college football. We're getting down the stretch here. We're getting to the nitty gritty of the college football season, and a lot is happening. A lot of cards are being shuffled, and we're getting into those final weeks, especially in the Big Ten, where a lot of shifting of the cards can happen. This weekend, the first game we got featured today is the Michigan State-Ohio State matchup happening in Columbus. Cody, just give me your quick analysis of this game. We'll get into some specifics here shortly, but what are your outlooks as far as looking at this game, looking at the spread, looking at the over-under? What are you seeing?
Yeah, there's a lot to dissect when it comes to this game. A lot that I'm going to enjoy watching as a kind of a rival of both teams. My shirt is a little bit representative of the Big Ten East race. I got the red, the green, the blue. Camera's backwards, so not correlating with what I'm pointing to, but you get the point. Yeah, this game should be an absolute treat. Most of the Michigan fan base would like to see Ohio State win because of the Big Ten East standings and all of that. I myself, I just can't root for Ohio State, and I think that even if the Big Ten title we don't get to go to the game, I think we still have a shot with everything else going on. And so I'm going to be rooting for the Sparties, Kenneth Walker. I want him. He needs to be the X factor for the Spartans. He needs to have the kind of game that he had against my Wolverines for them to pull off the upset here. Because on the other side, you have two players on the Heisman watch list in CJ Stroud and Travion Henderson versus Kenneth Walker. And yeah, it's going to be a real treat. The over-under, tough to call on this one. It's kind of right in that sweet spot if things happen like they did against Michigan, or if things get out of hand and Ohio State can run away with it like they did against Purdue, then I expect the over to hit. But yeah, it's going to be a good game. I don't know about the 19 points for Ohio State here. I think that's kind of coming off the Purdue game, but we'll see. What are your insights on this?
Yeah, I was looking at that 19 points too, and it looks kind of steep. I guess if you're looking at this matchup, looking at this rivalry, what it's really grown into over the last few years, 5-6 years, whatever you want to call it, last decade, even better part of a decade. You can expect a little bit more of a dogfight than a 19-point differential. Obviously, I think the bookies are taking into account what each one of these teams did against Purdue. Obviously, Ohio State had a much better performance against Purdue compared to my Spartans. But it's hard to really make those kinds of comparisons with a team like Purdue and just looking at one single previous matchup. But this is basically the Big Ten East. This is the Big Ten East. Whatever happens at this game really sets the stage going forward for the Big Ten East. And what makes things really interesting is if Michigan State wins and Michigan wins, then that puts Michigan and Michigan State at the top two in the Big Ten East. Who takes the top spot? Who has to make that decision of, okay, well, maybe State beat Michigan, but State did lose to Purdue. So how are you going to make that call? I mean, I don't want to be Gary Barta when I have that standing in front of me. But obviously, I'll be rooting for the Spartans this weekend really hard, obviously. And the next weekend, you're going to see me decked out my maize and blue. Probably the only time the whole year you'll see me wearing it. And some people ask me, why do you even own maize and blue gear? And I mean, it's for this situation right here. That is the game. That's the game we're looking forward to. That's the game Michigan fans and pretty much every fan, if you're a college football fan, you're looking forward to that game. Obviously, we're looking forward to this game too, but this is a big contention game that really sets the stage for not only the Big Ten East and not only the Big Ten, but the college football playoff. So we're really looking forward to this one. So this week, Michigan State has Ohio State. Next week, Michigan has Ohio State at the Big House. They're looking to get a win. I guess real quick, let's just fast forward before we can only dive so much into this game. We can look at over-under spreads, things like that. But what are we looking
Mel
for?
Tucker getting paid real quick.
Yeah, let's talk about Mel Tucker. Yeah, so Tuck is staying. Hashtag Tuck staying. Get that shit trending. Because Cody actually coined that term. I like it, especially it coincides really good with Tuck coming, which has became basically a household hashtag, as I would call it.
A mantra.
It's a mantra. Yeah, exactly. So Tuck is staying for the long term. And it was kind of up in the air. Is he going to go to LSU? Things were kind of, questionable there. But he actually hopped on a podcast with Draymond Green. I shared this on Twitter. And this was very, very prominent. M Live actually did a story on it as well, as far as, there's the back and forth between Draymond Green, obviously a Spartan alum, and is playing for Golden State now. You guys know who Draymond Green is. Come on now, get in the game. But he had some talks with Mel Tucker and kind of said, Mel kind of hinted towards the fact that Michigan State is a destination, not a stepping stone. And, that was very important to hear for Michigan State fans and also players for Michigan State, just to know that they have their coach, especially if you're a freshman, sophomore, you want to be able to look forward to having this coach for the rest of your tenure at the college. So I guess
and recruiting classes going forward. Your coach is going to be there for 10 more years. That's a 5-year player. He's going to be with him the whole time. So that's just huge as far as recruiting goes, and just Michigan State having a seat at the big boys table going forward. I think it's great for the Big Ten, for Michigan State, the rivalry, everything. So I'm in the minority. I think a lot of Michigan fans are hot and bothered. A lot of people are hot and bothered just by seeing this man get paid so much. And I don't endorse hating on people for getting what they deserve. So I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, he got a pretty hefty contract. We won't get too much into specifics right now, but it's a good amount of money. Right behind Nick Saban as far as coaches paid in the college football league in the landscape entirely. He is right behind Nick Saban. We all know Nick Saban over there at Alabama. The Crimson Tide is the highest paid college football coach standing, and it has been that way for a few years.
And Mel Tucker, now the highest paid black head coach in all of U.S. sports. So gotta mention that. That's awesome.
That's counting NFL. That's counting NHL. I don't know if there's any black coaches in NHL, but if there is, more power to them. But that's over across multiple leagues. That's pretty impressive. To have that statistic in there, and it's all obviously prominent as far as inclusion and things like that, and getting people, regardless of race, regardless of ethnicity, in the positions they deserve based on merit, rather than race. And I think that's really the case in the day and age we live in now, anyways. So it's good to see that. It's a great statistic, and I'm really happy for Mel Tucker. Another important little tidbit on Mel Tucker coming into this matchup with a new contract extension with Jim. He was on Jim Tressel's staff at Ohio State from 2001 till 2004. He was the Buckeyes defensive backs coach in 2002 when they won the Natty, and was co-defensive coordinator in his last season with the team. So there's a little bit of, familiar faces going on here. This is going to be kind of a recollection. I'm sure they're going to have some nostalgic stories to share, pregame. So it's going to be exciting.
Yeah, definitely hope they can summon some 2015 energy, getting that 17-14 win.
Yeah, and I want to see State and the Sparties really pull the upset here, because I hate Ohio State with a passion. If you know any sports fans, if you're a college football sports fan in the state of Michigan, you are grown up, you're bred to hate Ohio State, regardless if you're a State fan or Michigan fan. It's obvious with Michigan fans. The rivalry is a little more fresh, I think, with Michigan State and Ohio State, but it's definitely there. It's very alive and well, and it's a good rivalry to have. It's good to have another rivalry other than an in-state rivalry with another team that's very prominent in their college athletics, and they have a certain standard they build themselves up to. So it's important to have those rivalries, and important to have that type of competitive edge, or competitivity, if that's not even a word. Don't go to Merriam-Webster on me. But I'm really excited to see this game happen, and this basically sets the stage. Regardless of what happens this game, it's going to be a huge game going into next week with Michigan and Ohio State. So Ohio State's got a lot on their plate. They can't be sleeping on either of these teams. They got to be looking out for both sides of each of these teams. So I'm excited for this game. Don't want to put too many projections out there. I really hope, and my projection is to have State at least cover the spread. I'm not going to call it out and say they're going to win money line. And even though I want that, I might throw a little bit of money on that money line, just throwing it out there. But most of my money is going to go with the Sparties, with the spread, or against the spread.
And I think that's a good call, just because how they came back against Michigan, and Michigan has a great defense. And then when they were down to Purdue, they showed life to make it not so. But then they came back, scored the touchdown so quick, 2-point conversion. So I don't think they'll let it be a 19-point game. But good call.
Right, neither do I. Good deal. All right, let's move on to Oregon and Utah. So this is a big controversial game as far as the spread is concerned. A lot of teams, came against Oregon. Pretty much every single game, Oregon was favored, even in the close games. In this game at Utah is favored by 3 points, over under 59. Looking at this game, it seems pretty obvious. It's almost like the bookies are throwing you some bait. Be like, hey, take Take Utah. Or they might be even baiting some people to take Oregon. Take Oregon money line. Get that extra odd balance. Maybe throw that in a parlay and could possibly bait some people to think it's an easy win for Oregon. How do you see this game playing out?
I think it's going to be a lot like some of the other matches with tough Pac-12 opponents that Oregon has had. It's going to come down to really it's a 7:30 game in Utah, so that home crowd is going to be fired up. The Utah Utes have had a lot of things to overcome off the field this season, so they are playing for a lot more than just accolades at the end of the season. They're fired up, playing for something sentimental that means something, lost some players on their team. And, Oregon definitely has everything in the bag to win, but I think the nation, I'm waiting for them to slip up, the Utah Utes to take advantage and give them a loss. And then that will really make our playoff rankings look really good because we don't have Oregon in our top 6, and the committee has them at 3. So what do you think is going to happen in this game?
I really want the Utes to win. I'm pulling for the Utes. I think the Ducks are all hype, even with the wins that they've had. I think that they're very fabricated. I think their time is coming, similar to an Oklahoma situation where their time was coming and it did come. We just didn't know when it was going to come. You had the crumbling of Caleb Williams and Spencer Rattler couldn't handle it under pressure against Baylor. And we were expecting that at some point. Maybe in some games prior, we expected it to happen. The Texas game, a couple other games where you expected it to happen. It didn't happen. It happened against Baylor. We expected it to happen eventually. We're getting down to the last few games here. They're still undefeated. They were 9-0 going into last weekend. So, some thoughts of discouragement might have came into our heads, be like, oh, maybe Oklahoma's going to do it. Maybe they're going to pull it together. But no, our previous notions, our previous thoughts were correct, and we had to trust our analysis in that. So I think a very similar situation is going to happen with Oregon. I believe they are going to meet their maker this weekend against Utah. I'm going to take them -3. I'm going to take them to the house, throw them in a parlay, and ride it into the sunset, especially with that night game. That 7:30 crowd, like you alluded to, is going to be electric in Utah. So I'm excited for this game. I think they deserve to, win this game. It's obviously a big Pac-12 matchup to set them up for the conference, and they're going to likely meet again because they're in different divisions of the conference. But it's going to be very interesting to see how this plays out. And like you said, it's going to open up the college football playoff rankings. It's going to open up the top 4. It's going to let some teams in, especially depending on what's going to happen with Ohio State. Say Ohio State gets knocked off by State and Michigan, and Oregon gets knocked off. I mean, they're on very thin ice. They're lucky to be in the top 4. If they lose to Utah, they're out of it. They're done. So they're totally out of the conversation.
Stanford, is just doesn't really make too much sense. And I think the Utah Utes needs to take a page out of Stanford's book. UCLA had them on the ropes, just threw a devastating interception there. And then even Washington, 10 points, and it was a close, kind of weird game. So
that was a weird game.
If a team like Utah, who has everything in the bag to put together a win, can stay close and hang around, I think that they can pull the upset.
Yeah, I think they can too. Coach Kyle Whittingham of the Utah Utes, if he wins this game, there's a lot riding on this game, more than just conference play and more than the college football playoff rankings. If Kyle Whittingham and the Utah Utes win this game, that'll make him the winningest coach in Utah Utes history. So there's a lot riding on this game. There's a lot riding on it. And that record was set originally in 1925. So there's a lot riding on this game for the Utah Utes, just program wise, regardless of what else is going on outside the league and outside of the program itself. So I'm excited for this game. I'm looking forward to watching it. Take Utah -3. I like it.
I like the under here too.
You do like the under? You think it's going to be a defensive matchup?
Just how Oregon's games have really played out for the most part, 59. And I think it's just going to be an emotional game, and nobody's going to be able to just put together long streaks of scoring runs.
Yeah, great analysis. I agree with that. I think it's going to be very dicey on the offensive side for both teams. They're going to have to fight for their touchdowns. The defenses are going to be very inspired going into this game. They're going to want to prevent as many points as possible, especially the Utah Utes and as well as Oregon. They're going to both want to stop those points from being on the board. So I like the under in this game. Take the under. This is my bet personally. This is all coming from me. Utah -3 and the under in that game. I like it. Maybe throw in a parlay with State plus 19, and we'll see what happens. Scott Van Pelt, I watch his late night shows after I think it's after the Monday Night Football game, or is it after the third? It was actually last night after the Thursday Night Football, and he's taking Ohio State minus 19. And they're over 60% profitable as far as college football bets are this year. They're like 45 and 30 or something like that, and they've had like 3 pushes. But I don't know. I think he's gonna be wrong on this one, but hopefully I'm right and he's wrong, so I can talk more shit to him maybe on Twitter about it. Scott, I love you, man. I love your show. Hope you watch this and give me some accolades back. But
keep watching the show. That's a dream.
Yeah. And he has another guy that's on there that gives some college football and other betting insights. They have a
Stanford Steve, I think is his name.
Yeah, Stanford Steve. And they also have a great segment which I really like. It's called Bad Beats, which is basically they take one side or position on a bet. And they say, oh, well, if you had the over here or had the under here, you were this close to covering it. And, you just, so far away. And they play the play that really turned the tide as far as which bet hit and which bet didn't hit based on the game. So it really proves the point of how close the bookies are a lot of times, how close they are to, their picks and their analysis. And there's a lot that goes into that statistic wise. So it was really interesting to see that. And I enjoy that show and that segment quite a bit. Good deal. Let's move on. Let's keep it rolling here. SMU versus Cincinnati. Cincinnati coming in minus 10.5, over under 65 at Cincinnati. Cody, what are we seeing in this game?
Two teams we talk a lot about Cincinnati, but SMU been flying a little bit under the radar all year long. They just suffered 2 losses in the last couple of weeks, so that has something to do with it. But don't let that fool you. Tanner Mordecai for the SMU Mustangs is having a hell of a season. If we look at the QB comparison here, he is actually having a lot better numbers than even QB Desmond Ridder of the Cincinnati Bearcats. Mordecai is eclipsing him by 800 yards, 15 touchdowns. He has thrown 4 more interceptions, but the ratio is far in Tanner Mordecai's favor, and he's completing 69% of his passes compared to Desmond Ridder's 66, even though Mordecai's thrown a hell of a lot more. And I think if you knew his story, he comes from Oklahoma. He's a transfer there. He played a few games last year before Spencer Rattler got his footing under him. So he has the talent, highly recruited, and he's proven it this year. Deserves a little bit more recognition, but you're in the AAC, the American Athletic Conference. So I think that has something to do with it. I'm really excited for all these teams to start to move into like the Big 12, the SEC, all this conference realignment. I can't wait for it to start to shake out. But the Bearcats, they're going to have to prove it again here, and they're going to have to look good because they have that unfortunate circumstance of having their best game behind them and beating Notre Dame. But if a team like SMU, who doesn't get a lot of respect, gives you a hard time, then you just have room to move down, really. You need teams in front of you. If you're Cincinnati to mess up, you can't be looking bad or messing up.
Yeah, if you're Cincinnati, you really want Oregon to lose against the Utes. And you want Ohio State to get out of there too. You want Michigan State to win. You want Michigan to win. That really opens the door for Cincinnati if they keep winning. That they're the first ones in. They're going to come into the top 4 before State or Michigan does.
Definitely.
So I think there's still a spot for State or Michigan depending on how the cards fall, with Ohio State being the deciding factor in that decision. But I mean, you're almost looking at a possibility of Georgia, Alabama, Cincy, and Michigan or Michigan State being in the top 4 once everything's said and done. It's very possible, and it's still very in the cards as far as being able to happen with how the cards may fall. And I'm saying,
and Ohio State-Cincinnati matchup in the playoffs would also be pretty cool to see. Both Ohio teams, and Cincinnati would just be coming in just wanting to prove everything. Since that
would be a crazy game to see. I would love to see that. And depending on how it happens, there's going to be some crazy games going down the stretch, and it starts now. This is the beginning of the end is right now. So we're focused on that, and that's another reason we're focusing really strongly on college football. Instead of college basketball, we're going to have a short segment on college basketball towards the end of the show today. We're going to probably talk about it. We're going to allocate probably half the show to college basketball on Monday, so look forward to that. But yeah, we got to finish up strong here with college football because things are getting interesting. We got to talk about it. So I'm really excited. Luke Fickell, he's been doing a great job at Cincinnati. He's been getting the job done. They got to keep finishing. They got to keep trucking along. SMU, they are no team to sleep on. You got to be watchful and you got to be careful to not have a Michigan State Purdue situation arise, because that could happen. And the Purdue Michigan State thing, I think, was more improbable than having SMU come into Cincinnati and pull an upset. So this is going to be a really tight game. I'm excited for this one. Over under 65. Cincinnati minus 11. That spread has since changed since I even wrote it on the screen. So that these spreads are fluctuating, guys. Bettors are coming in, parlays are being made, and these odds are fluctuating. They're going to fluctuate a lot more too before kickoff. So,
though I talked a lot about Tanner Mordecai and the SMU offense and their ability to put points on the board, I need to talk about Cincinnati's defense real fast, because they have put together an elite season. And I think it's one of the reasons why a lot of people do have them so high on their list. 16 interceptions, 7 forced fumbles, and 13 fumble recoveries. So those are some great numbers when you're only 10 games in. And they're going to need to really play with a lot of swagger tomorrow afternoon to get the dub and get the respect that they deserve and want.
Yeah, exactly. I'm looking at the team stats here. Points per game, 41.6 for SMU, 39.2 for Cincinnati. These stats are very close, too. No matter which section you're looking at, they're very close. Points allowed per game, 25.9 for SMU, 16.2 for Cincy. Total yards, 498.7 against Cincy's 417.7. So a little bit of a differential there. Yards passing, 329 for SMU, 244 for Cincinnati, and then yards rushing, 169.7 for SMU, 173 for Cincy. So, I mean, SMU, as far as passing yards and rushing yards combined, they're outweighing the Cincinnati Bearcats as far as yardage, and averages per game. So that's something to be focused on.
I think it'll be a battle, just pointing to what you've said and what I've said, to see if the SMU offense can operate how they have against other teams and when they've had success against this elite Cincinnati defense, and not play, because they lost to Memphis just a few weeks ago, and then I forget who else, I think Houston. So yep. 2 good teams in the conference, but if Cincinnati can replicate what those teams did to SMU, then the Bearcats will have their way with them. But if they can't, also SMU, if they can stop Jerome Ford, he doesn't get enough love because it's all Desmond Ridder, but Jerome Ford provides a lot of relief for Desmond Ridder to make plays on the ground and through the air. So if you can contain that running game for Cincinnati, that'll help you start to break apart the Cincinnati offense. So just a little bit of what both teams could do to find success in the game.
Yeah, definitely. You look at those scores too, against Memphis losing by a field goal, against Houston losing by a touchdown. It's setting up for SMU they should be able to at least cover 11 points. You think they'd be able to cover if they make this a dogfight, they realize what's at stake. Because you look at Cincinnati too, if they incur a loss, they're dropping too out of the college football playoff. Yeah, and they really have no chance at that point. They haven't really incurred a loss.
Unfortunately, yeah.
Yeah, it's too bad. But in that American Conference that they're in, that conference strength, that conference and schedule strength, it really works against the Cincinnati Bearcats, regardless of how good they are, and regardless of what recruits they have and who transferred there.
The group of 5 as a whole compared to the Power 5, So
yeah,
not just Cincinnati and the AAC's hope, but all the group of 5 hope of making the playoff kind of hangs in the balance this year.
Yeah, it really does. It really does. Yeah.
But tonight, though, we got Houston. They're actually matching up with Memphis tonight. So Houston's actually in first place above Cincinnati in the AAC standings. So that's interesting.
That is interesting. So could that tide be turned based on what happens tonight and tomorrow?
Yeah, and I think they're on a collision course for one another in the championship, especially if Cincinnati takes care of business. And the Houston Cougars, I think they lost their first or second game, maybe their first game, and they've won that ever since. So that team is a good team too. And if they weren't in the conference they'd be getting a lot more attention instead of sitting back there at 24. Yeah.
Yeah. Really interesting stuff. A lot of things are colliding. And, it's going to be a collision course for the entire league. The entire college football landscape as a whole is going to be on a collision course going into this weekend. And a lot of decisions are going to be made as far as where the college football rankings are going to fall. Are things going to stay the same? I think it's fair to say there's going to be a little bit of shuffling, if not a lot. But there's a lot of shuffling that could possibly take place depending on where these certain games fall and which favor they fall. So really exciting stuff. This is a big weekend for college football, guys. Let's move on, though. Let's talk about the Heisman race. So you got the odds here on my screen right now. CJ Stroud is in the lead at plus 183. Bryce Young at plus 215. Kenneth Walker III slightly behind them at plus 365. What are you looking at here as far as the Heisman race, Cody?
Yeah, you really got those top 5 names, I think, are the only ones that hold a lot of weight, because 6 sitting there is Caleb Williams at plus 4,000. So that's a little out there. But CJ Stroud, after his game against Purdue, he's got the top spot right now. And that's kind of how this thing goes. It doesn't matter beginning of the year or even midway through the year who's leading the race. Of course, it helps. You got to put together a whole season. But as far as front runners, it really comes down to these last couple of weeks and who is going to wow the crowd. So this weekend, Kenneth Walker head-to-head versus CJ Stroud and Travion Henderson is going to have a lot to do with it. Bryce Young, he's kind of has the fortunate situation of not having too much difficult games in front of him besides the SEC championship at this point. So besides that, you got Matt Corral, Kenny Pickett, quarterbacks from Ole Miss and Pittsburgh. Sam Hartman's back there. Desmond Ridder from Cincinnati. And then you start to get into some defensive players who, in my opinion, always deserve a little bit more love, but that's just the way things go in these day and age. I don't know the last big name defensive player to finish top 5 on the Heisman. I know Jabril Peppers was on there a couple in 2016. That's a lot of hype, but I don't know who's been on there since him.
How is the Heisman Award given? What kind of merit is it based on? Is it completely discretionary, or do they actually look at hard statistics, records? How is this decided? Because, there's got to be an opportunity for almost, at least a good amount of these people on this list to acquire that trophy. And that notoriety. How is that decided? Do you know if there's a sole reason or if it's completely discretionary based on a board decision?
I think it's all just the votes that they receive. I don't know what the exact specification the voters are given. What criteria? That's what I was looking for. Criteria that the voters are given to evaluate and vote on. I think that it's success in the season and just how much you have to do with your team's success. But that's just me. I'm not entirely sure. But when you look at actual numbers and stuff like you talk about, I think that it definitely comes into subjectivity. It comes into it a lot, and who is getting national media attention and things of the like.
Yeah, so I've had Kenneth Walker on my Heisman watch list for a long time, since very early in the season when I saw his prominence. And seeing him at plus 365. If they get a win or at least cut it close, I think against Ohio State, I think he's still a very strong contender, puts up some good rushing yards, maybe even a touchdown or 2. I think he's still in the race, regardless of what happens in this game. I might throw some bets out there on Kenneth Walker III tonight, because those odds could significantly change between now and the Heisman decision. Depending on where this game goes against Michigan and Ohio State. So you got CJ Stroud there, Kenneth Walker III. I think if Kenneth Walker and Michigan State beats Ohio State, I think that slingshots him in front of CJ Stroud in the first place spot. Yeah. So we'll have to see how that happens and see how those odds change depending on how this game plays out. But it'll be interesting to see. I would encourage everyone to get their bets in when they can. Earlier the better, just so Definitely. They don't fluctuate too much.
Yep, even Travion Henderson back there at plus 4,500. Say he has 2 signature games against Michigan State and then Michigan, he could slingshot himself into 1 or 2, and that would be huge odds. So something to take a look at. But on the other side, Kenneth Walker, he goes off. He has a signature game against Ohio State and is the reason why they beat the Buckeyes. That could solidify his stance. And then he has next week against Penn State to also add some signature highlights to end the season with. So
Yeah, might be worth it for everybody. Just throw a little bit of money on a couple of those top guys. Obviously, bring some analysis into it, so you're not throwing too much money out there, and give yourself a good profit margin. But do your analysis, see the games you guys got ahead of everybody. So see what games are what we're looking ahead at, and make your analysis and decision based on that. So really exciting stuff. When is the Heisman? When is the Heisman presentation, Cody?
It's late December, I think.
Okay. I think it is too. I think it's after the conference titles and everything are decided. Maybe not quite once you get to the actual college football playoff games, the bowl game, the BCS games. But I think it's right around there. It's right around that time, because they have to have these games, and the only reason these are still odds to be picked. I mean, the
December
odds are going to
11th.
fluctuate. December 11th.
Month
Okay.
away.
Yeah, so that's going to be following the conference title matchups for all these conferences that are included in here: SEC, Big 10, Big 12, Pac-12. What am I missing? ACC. There's a lot of games and a lot of stuff that has to happen for these odds to change, and I'll be watching these odds and this list very closely as things progress and as more decisions and games are decided. But we'll leave that be for now. Let's move on. Let's talk about college basketball. I want to get into the college basketball. Actually, wait, before we do that, let's talk about our top 6. So this is going to change here. Let's talk about our top 6 in the college football playoff rankings, the Gin Pros playoff rankings for college football. Cody, you go ahead and explain yours to me first, and then I'll give you mine.
Yeah, we talked about them a little bit on Monday, but just Georgia at 1. Both ours are the same. They're just kind of shuffled a little bit, and the only way they really differ from the committees is we don't have Oregon in there completely. So if you take Oregon out of the committee's top 6 and then just push theirs up, it almost aligns with John's completely. Just a little bit of shuffling in there, but yeah. Anything can happen. We know it's all about to change in these last couple of weeks. So you can speak on yours a little bit if you want. We can talk about the committees on Tuesday because we haven't talked about that yet. Notre Dame,
of course.
8.
Yeah, I'm going to share my screen real quick just so people can see the graphic, those you watching live. So you can see the graphic here, hopefully as good as you can possibly see it. So I have Georgia and the Bulldogs number 1, Cincy and the Bearcats. I'm putting conference and all that strength, the schedule strength, all that aside. Give me the Cincinnati Bearcats at number 2. They deserve it. Ohio State, I got at number 3. Obviously, that is pending based on what's going to happen against Michigan and Michigan State. And then I got Bama at 4. So you take my 2 and my 3. I mean, if anything crazy happens, which is, a lot less crazy than it might meet as what meets the eye, say SMU beats Cincy, and say State beats Ohio State, those 2 teams are out. They're gone. They're probably, at least, 9 or 10 at the best. As far as, Cincy will probably get knocked down further than Ohio State will if they lose. So that's just looking at conference strength. But if that happens, then a lot of things are going to shift. A lot of things are going to change. This is basically as it stands right now, given no games have taken place with any of these teams for this week. So I like Ohio State at my 3. I like Bama at 4. And I put Michigan at 5. Obviously put them ahead of Michigan State just because of that loss against Purdue for Michigan State. Now, people are going to say the Paul Finnebombs of the world are going to be like, how can you put Michigan ahead of Michigan State? That's just blasphemy. And especially, it might even carry more weight with me because I'm a State fan, putting Michigan ahead of my Sparties. But I'm being objective when I make these top 6 things. Going into Selection Sunday, things are going to get very interesting. So I got to bet with my head, not with my heart. That's one of the paramount rules. So I have Michigan in that place for that reason, because of Purdue. And I'm really confident with this top 6. I think this is how it should be. I think I might have been predicting the future a little bit going into this game with Oregon and Utah, expecting Oregon to lose, expecting them to lose a week ahead of when it actually happened, just to get them out of the top 4, get them out of the top 6, so we don't have to deal with them anymore. They're a distraction to the college football playoff, in my opinion. They've been getting lucky. They've been getting very fortunate to remain and stand where they are. So that's basically it in a nutshell. I can go on and on, but I'll take up too much space in my hard drive. So Cody, I'll let you go.
Yep. I won't talk. We can, if you want to scroll down just a little bit, you can look at the committees, and we can look at the teams just on the outside here, like Notre Dame, Oklahoma State, who is poised to meet up with the Sooners for the Big 12, so that they still have a chance to get into at least the the last two out in 5 or 6. And then if chaos doesn't ensue, the Big Ten collapses on itself, we'll have to talk about Notre Dame, Oklahoma State, and those kind of teams. If all of that stuff kind of happens and everything goes wrong for the team that are poised to be in the playoff discussion right now, if things start to go wrong for them.
Yeah, definitely, especially this late in the year. Even if you're a top 4 team, even if you don't have any losses, even if you're Georgia and you lose a game, I mean, you're going to get knocked out of top 6. That's just how it is. You're going to go to the back of the line, maybe not below Notre Dame, or you might be 7th or 6th even, but there's going to be a lot of door openings going on. There's going to be wide open garage doors for these teams to slide in and take their position. So, I'm looking for Oregon to lose. Hopefully Ohio State can lose. Georgia, I think, is pretty solidified at that number 1 spot. It doesn't look like that's going to change unless something absolutely crazy happens, which I don't expect to happen with this Georgia team. Very solid in their offense and defense. They've really grown into their skin as a team, too, as the years progress. A little bit of uncertainty early on, but they've found their way so far into the season, and I think they're going to finish strong. And they're going to have a spot in the top 4, I think, regardless of, how they play. They're going to win these games. So, yeah, basically, if you lose, if you're in the top 5, you lose, you're probably going to get dropped down below, the 9th spot, 10th spot, especially this late in the season. Think about how late in the season this is. Winning at this point in the season is more important than it ever has been any other point in the season.
It's definitely interesting to see how many teams have already had head-to-head matchups just in the top 10 here between Ohio State but Oregon and Ohio State, yeah, and Notre Dame, Cincinnati, and then Ohio State, Michigan State, all having to play in the next couple of weeks. Georgia and Alabama probably going to have to play one another. Just pretty chaotic, and I think that's part of the reason why the expansion is imminent.
Yeah, the expansion is imminent. I think more talks have been happening. Nothing really solidified into concrete yet. Nothing really set in stone as far as the expansion process and how it's going to play out definitively. But conversations have resumed on that, and I'm excited to see where that's going to play out. Hopefully things take place going into next year where we can see some solidification as far as where and why and how that expansion is going to take place. So I'm excited for that, and we'll have to focus on that as we go further down the stretch. But let's move on. Let's get the rest of these topics in for the people so they don't get tired and fall asleep on us. I know you guys are involved. You guys are getting into this, and I'm happy you guys have stuck with us this long if you have. Let's talk about college basketball, though, for a short segment. Big Ten teams. You got 3 Big Ten teams with very lofty preseason rankings. Michigan at 3, Ohio State at 16, and Illinois at 6. All of those teams have fallen so far, and because of that, they have lost those ranking spots. Cody, there's a pretty important game. We put graphics up about it. Let's start with the Michigan Seton Hall game, and then we'll go into the Marquette Illinois game. And then maybe if we have time, we can talk about the Ohio State Xavier game. But let's start with the Michigan Seton Hall. What went wrong with your Wolverines in that game?
The Big East is really nothing to laugh at in basketball. Lots of tournament teams, lots of teams who have had success. But Seton Hall, obviously emotional game for them. First time we've played them in 32 years since Michigan won the national championship. Their only one in 89, and Glenn Rice had 34 points in overtime. And, just couldn't get it done. One of our freshmen one of my buddies, David, I think he watches the show regularly. He asked me what I thought before the game happened. I told him that freshman Caleb Houston had to have a big game, lots of contributions, and he actually did the opposite. Had an awful game from the floor, shooting wise, and we didn't have that guy, that next guy besides our stars to really step up and have a solid game. So those secondary, tertiary pieces weren't there for us, and we left the door open for Seton Hall to come back. We led by 11 points though, and not really an excuse. Tough to see it happen, but we got to relax as basketball fans. It's a November loss. This isn't football. There's only a few teams that run the table and really look like number 1 seeds the entire season. So when all's said and done, I think it's good to kind of suffer these early, see who you are as a team. And yeah, definitely. A lot of things can be blamed on the Wolverines as far as losing that game. Some late fouls that happened, missing free throws, missing some key shots in the paint, allowing too many shots in the paint from Seton Hall.
You can go on and on about it, but I think what's very important to take away, which you already alluded to, is the fact that you got to incur some of these early losses so you can realize who you are as a team, where you got to fix certain things, and how you can benefit from those mistakes going forward. It's a very long season, lots of games, a lot more room for error in basketball, college basketball, compared to football. Rankings really don't matter a whole lot. All rankings really matter for is the conference championships. And even then, it really doesn't matter because usually if you're in the top, half of your conference, you're going to be able to play for that in the tournament at the end. And you just got to make sure you make it to the top 64. And where, only way that rankings really matter going into that is seeding. So
yeah, UCLA was one of the playing teams, against Sparties last year, and look what they did. So
exactly, perfect example. So I mean, anything can happen. That's why they call it March Madness, because it creates madness amongst everybody, and that's really like my Christmas. Coming into March Madness. It's March Madness, and it's my Christmas. It's almost like I don't want to get too hypothetical here, but it's a Christmas season that lasts a lot longer than one day. Let's just put it that way, short and sweet for everybody. Then obviously Illinois falls by a point to Marquette, with a lot of players exceeding and playing above their pay grade for Marquette to win that game against Illinois, and then Ohio State just fell apart, losing by 6 to Xavier. Crazy stuff to happen in the Big Ten so far, but really opens up the Big Ten for some of these other teams working their way up.
All those games are a part of what was called the Gavitt tip-off games, a tournament between the Big Ten, the Big East, and I think it's been going on for a few years now. Pretty cool thing they got going on early on. I think they just signed on for a couple more years of it. But the Big Ten looked rough early on, like I said, early November basketball, but Big East showing out, going 6-2 against the Big Ten. The only Big Ten teams to get wins in this tournament are Michigan State and Indiana. And your Sparties, as far as, like we said, rankings don't matter, but the Sparties have moved on to the KenPom ratings. They are number 17 now after looking decent against Kansas, which Kansas is one of those teams that is like Gonzaga that I do believe are going to be one seeds the entire year long. So they looked decent against the Kansas team and have looked good in their other games. Gabe Brown, a couple of your other guys, really looking good. So lots to look forward to for college basketball.
Yeah, especially for these Big Ten teams, the Michigans, the Ohio States, even the Illinois, the Michigan States. It's really important to focus on and not get too gassed up with the fact that, we're ranked number 4 in the nation so early in the season. We got to live up to those expectations. You get too much of that in your head, and then you forget how to play the game basketball. So it's important. I think it's even better for Michigan State to start off unranked. Let's work our way up. Let's find a comfortable spot, within the top 10, top 15, somewhere mid-season, and just kind of ride that out. And that's the same way for Michigan, Illinois, and Ohio State, which I think a lot of these teams will find themselves in going down the road into the season. So it's important to just kind of get rankings out of your head, out of your mindset, especially early on, because they'll just get in the way and you'll just get distracted by it. So
yeah, my Wolverines, they play tonight at 12:30, half an hour past midnight. Any Wolverine fans staying up for it? I know a lot are, but just in this game, just real quick, against Seton Hall, we lost on Terrence Williams, good bench player, like him, nothing against the guy, but he took the game-winning shot, which you need Eli Brooks or Hunter Dickinson taking that last shot. So I want to see Michigan shake it off, have one of those big guys if there's any key moments like that, and don't let a midnight 12:30 start time throw you guys off in Vegas there. All right.
Very well said. Very well said. So yeah, it's a late game over there on the West Coast. Michigan UNLV happening at 12:30 a.m. Eastern time. You guys are watching that one. Hopefully you don't got to get up too early on a Saturday, so you got some time to sleep in for that one. But yeah, really good stuff. Good show today. Really, had a lot of information, almost information overload for all you guys today. And we'll start to wrap it up here. Cody, do you have any final statements you want to leave the people with going into the weekend?
Nope. Just shout out to Malik Cunningham and Sweet Lou Nichols III getting the middle of the week, first time middle of the week shot of gin. Tough performance. So yeah, you can look at the graphics we put out to see the actual numbers, but those two tips of the cap. So there you go.
Cody's been killing it with the graphics and the new shot of the week, the middle of the week shot of gin. The players are going to be featured every single week in different sports throughout the college landscape. in college athletics all over the place, basketball, football, or maybe even some other sports that are non-profitable for the school that we're going to be focusing on. If they're big names, if they make an impact, they're going to be featured. So good stuff, good work. Make sure to focus and stay tuned and in the loop with all of our social media on Instagram, Twitter, and on Facebook and everywhere else. Follow our link tree down below at the bottom of your screen, and make sure to stay in the loop with everything we got going on. A lot of stuff is moving, a lot of moving parts. The machine is only getting bigger and bigger as the weeks go by, so don't miss a thing. And I hope you guys stay with us throughout this entire journey. We're really excited as we take this into the holiday season. A lot of sports happening and a lot of decisions being made, a lot of big news coming out. So stay tuned and stay with us through it all. But for now, thank you guys for tuning into the Gin College Podcast. I'm your host, as always, John J. II, with Cody Almasi